We're in Bowling today, a name that suggests a lively sporting event or at least a decent bar. What we actually have is a small Clydeside village with more history than functional shops. I parked in a car park featuring 2 overfull bins and an abandoned caravan quietly collapsing in on itself. Hazel, my dog and moral compass, was already itching to explore. We began on the core path, which follows an old railway line and is better maintained than I am. Smooth tarmac, neat hedgerow, and hardly any litter, like walking through a council's PR brochure. On one side the cliffs rise steeply, moss clinging on like it has a mortgage to pay. On the other side, woodland where birds sing like they're auditioning for something. Hazel dashed ahead with the confidence of someone who's been here before. I, meanwhile, was sweating and attempting to fix a sock that had retreated into my boot. The information boards appeared every so often, Roman legions, lochs, industry. I read each dutifully, forgetting them immediately. A few benches lined the path, though Hazel seemed determined to treat them all as personal scent repositories. It's a surprisingly pleasant walk. You could almost believe you're fitter than you are, right up until a pensioner with walking poles overtakes you and Hazel looks back in quiet judgment. A little further on and it's the Bowling War Memorial. Quiet, dignified and mercifully free of pigeons. Hazel sat beside me, watching intently, or perhaps just waiting to see if the daffodils were edible. Then everything opens up, quite literally, as you reach Bowling Basin. This is where the Forth and Clyde Canal, which began its life in 1768 and was eventually finished in 1790, meets the Clyde. It was dug by thousands of men with shovels and barrows, and what I assume was a limitless supply of swearing, so ships could cross Scotland without risking their lives on the north coast. The basin itself is part marina, part mudflap, part time capsule. At low tide it's mostly silt. Thick, boot-snatching sludge that even Hazel treated cautiously. That lasted precisely 5 seconds before she launched herself into it anyway, emerging moments later looking confused and caked in something that definitely wasn't just mud. The boats here span a full spectrum, from gleaming yachts you suspect are only sailed on Instagram, to sagging wooden shells being quietly reclaimed by the river. Above it all looms the viaduct, a colossal brick and steel presence arching high over the basin. The arches frame the sky, like some grand Victorian dare. You can't help noticing it. Hazel certainly did. She stopped to glare at a pigeon, sitting on the topmost edge as if considering a tactical climb. But we'd get to the viaduct properly later. It's hard to imagine what this place was. Busy, loud, all ropes and shouting and smoke. But now it's quiet, a little frayed at the edges, and all the better for it. You can hear gulls overhead, the occasional clang of rigging, and the rhythmic sigh of the water against stone. We wandered towards the customs house, a neat whitewashed building that used to collect tolls. Now it does what everything in Scotland eventually does: holiday lets. I pressed my face to the glass and pictured a 19th century captain arguing with a clerk while Hazel sniffed the flower beds, like she was carrying out a health and safety inspection. The quay is lined with old bollards, worn mooring rings half buried in grass, and fragments of wooden piers poking from the water like the ribs of some long-dead beast. At one point Hazel found a particularly interesting smell in the grass and rolled in it before I could stop her, ensuring the car would later smell like low tide. I passed a man methodically painting his boat, a blinding shade of blue, whistling something vaguely aggressive. A few kids stood on the bank throwing bread at ducks, directly beneath a sign politely asking them not to. The ducks seemed unimpressed, but they took the bread anyway. We stopped at the Dug Cafe, which sits in one of the restored railway arches. Hazel barged in ahead of me as though she'd booked a table. I ordered coffee and a cake. Hazel was presented with a free bone-shaped biscuit, and she stared at me pointedly until I handed over a bit of my cake too. The marina is sprinkled with odd little carvings, a swan here, an owl there, that give the impression someone in the council once bought a chainsaw and never quite put it down. One particularly lifelike owl made me say hello before realising it wasn't real. Couples wandered by holding hands, joggers drifted through, cyclists clunked over the cobbles, and Hazel positioned herself squarely in the centre of it all, as though appointed harbour master. It's the kind of place that rewards loitering. You don't need to do anything. You just stand there, watch the boats, smell the salt and paint, and let history seep into you. We took a short detour along the towpath, flat and lined with neat bushes. I threw Hazel's ball into the canal and she leapt in without hesitation. The ball drifted just far enough to make me wonder if I'd have to go in after her, but she returned dripping and triumphant. At least this time she didn't jump on a duck's head, which happened in Inverness. The ducks here looked visibly relieved. From here we climbed up onto the route of the old Lanarkshire and Dunbartonshire Railway, built in 1896, entirely because one railway company wanted to irritate another. I'd already seen the viaduct earlier from the basin below, impossible to miss, looming over everything. But up here, you finally appreciate how big and ridiculous it is. Victorian engineering really did run on spite and tea. The original station is gone now, though its ivy-smothered platform still lurks in the undergrowth. It was called Frisky Station, which surely raised an eyebrow even then. You can still see the outline of the platform and what was once a set of steps now leading confidently to a wall of brambles. The path along the trackbed is broad, green and suspiciously photogenic. The birds chirped politely, joggers nodded at me with just enough pity to sting. Hazel bounded ahead like she was filming an advert, while I trailed behind pretending I wasn't gasping for breath. Eventually, the viaduct stretched out ahead, a massive brick and steel relic reborn as the Bowline, a raised walkway with views for miles. From up here the Clyde stretches out to the west, the Kilpatrick Hills roll into the distance, and below the basin curls into itself, dotted with boats and ducks still eyeing Hazel nervously. The walkway has planters, seating, and little boards explaining what used to be where. One mentioned a hydraulic swing. I nodded knowingly, while Hazel sat beside me, staring at a cyclist backpack like it might contain ham. We lingered there, letting the breeze dry Hazel off while I pretended my knees weren't throbbing. Couples took selfies, children ran ahead shouting. Hazel surveyed it all with quiet assurance of a dog who believes she owns the view. We headed back, Hazel still damp and methodically rubbing herself against every bench. Cyclists swerved and I apologised a lot. Back at the car she jumped in and immediately began perfuming the upholstery with eau de Canal. One duck stood in the grass watching us leave. I could swear it blinked slowly, like it remembered Inverness. But that's Bowling, where Romans, engineers, and ducks with long memories all leave their mark. Bring snacks, walk slowly, and never underestimate a duck with a grudge. And if you enjoyed watching me be outpaced by a collie while mumbling about history, you can always like, comment and subscribe. Though Hazel remains unconvinced it helps.